Welcome to Arise Life, a community of believers being equipped, empowered, and released into their destiny. For more information, go to ariselife.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. For those of you who were with us last week, it was a shockingly intense time. There was something that God was doing so interesting. We're singing about Lazarus, that person. But last week we were talking about dry bones coming up out of the grave. And for so many of us, we were surrendering our graves. We were surrendering the things that had died, the despair, the hopelessness. But we can't live without hope. We can't. We cannot live without hope. So how do we live without hope when our hopes have died, right? We talk about this, our hopes. My hopes are, I have a hope in a specific outcome. Just me? When I say I hope, I'm hoping for X, Y, Z. Okay, nobody has ever given their life to Jesus without a hope of what they get in return. Can I be real? Nobody was like, you know what? I'm done with this life. You can have it. Right? We all came with a specific expectation and outcome. And every one of us has been disappointed because at the very least, our understanding of what God was going to do and when he was going to do it and how he was going to do it and with whom he was going to do it didn't pan out. So how do we live hopeful lives without hope? That's what we're digging into Ruth today. We're probably only going to do 3 or 4 verses because we're going to be digging into something here. So if you guys got Bibles, they are highly recommended because this is an open book test. Life is. Turn to the end of chapter 2. So for those of you guys who have been with us or not, it's still the same. We have this story. Naomi was a woman. Her name was My Pleasure or Pleasant, the pleasant life. Who's lost a lot looking for the pleasure or the pleasant life? And Naomi is married to a guy. God is my king. Ladies, if you're married to a guy, you want God to be his king. Right? Because you don't trust him. True? Right? No, but God is king. But it turns out God is not his king because when the going gets hard, and when I said this last week, it was hard, legitimately hard. The famine they were facing took down one of the 3 greatest empires of that time. That famine was so legit. The threat to their lives was real, but when the threat came, they ran. You know, it says the devil is like a roaring lion seeking who he may devour. Roar is threat. May is, may I? When he threatens, if I submit to the threat, he may devour me. The threat is real, but if I submit to it, then I get devoured. When the threat tells me what to do, then I am devoured. And so here, she hears the threat, they see the threat, and they flee from the land of promise, the place of their inheritance, the place of their destiny, place of their calling. This is a place God talked about. He said, when you get to the land of promise, coming out of Egypt, coming out of slavery, when you get there, I've got wells you didn't dig, vineyards you didn't plant, and houses you didn't build. Who just thinks that sounds like the lottery? But here I've got to explain something to you. The life in Christ is not without effort, but it's effort unto an end. The life without Christ is described in Genesis 3 where he says you will sow and you'll just get back thorns and thistles. His life, he says, you got to work, right? You got to maintain the well. You've got to tend the vineyards. You got to build the house. You got to maintain the houses, but you get to enjoy them at a discount. And so they leave that to go save their lives. And Jesus said, he who seeks to save his life will do what? Lose it. And they walked that out. They went to the one place you're not supposed to go, the place of Moab, where you will do the utterly unthinkable to stay alive. Who are my people that bit by bit you got boiled like a frog and found yourself in a place you never thought you'd go, doing things you never thought you'd do, with people you never thought you'd do them with, because you just one little decision after a time. They didn't want to get there. Who here, you made decisions, you're like, I didn't have a choice. Let me just say this. We're going to get back to this. But Naomi was not alone in the land of promise experiencing this famine. There were others who didn't flee to Moab. I want to say right now, you will never have the more of Jesus. We will never have the more of Jesus that Jesus has for us until we surrender that narrative of I didn't have a choice. Because we will be a slave, locked in, weak and feeble into this place. And finally, the pain gets so great because Naomi's husband dies, her two sons marry Moabite women that they're not supposed to, because Moabite women have consistently led the Israelites down a long, bad road. And then she's left with nothing. She says, forget this. Like the prodigal son, better in my father's house as a slave, as a beggar, than live in this place out. Who of us here has, you only finally made the right choice because it hurt too bad? One of a counselor friend of mine told me years ago, it's a pretty common statement, but, you know, if we're hurting and don't want to change, we'll have to hurt more until we want to change. But we get to choose what the pain level we're willing to endure. Some of us are pretty amazing at enduring pain and not learning from it. I thought it was a superpower. And so they're coming. She just says, out of here. And she has two daughters, right? You remember her one daughter was, the two sons who died were sickly and languishing unto death. And they did. And the two daughters-in-law, one was called Gazelle. She decided to stay. But the one named Ruth, or friendship, said, no, where you go, I go. I will go. Your God is my God. Because even though Ruth was convinced that God hated her, Naomi was convinced that God hated her, Ruth saw God in her. You need friends who see God in you when you've lost him. Ruth follows her. Now you got to understand, Ruth she has seen the worst because she grew up in the worst. She grew up in a horrific area doing the things they did in Moab. You can look in archaeology. I don't want to talk about them. They're horrific. And she said, I've heard just stories of the land of Israel. Which, by the way, at this time isn't all that great. But compared to the world, it's great. Anybody done that? You're like, they said this church would be amazing. That people would love you. They would be nice to you. They would never say a bad word. And they would always just give you money. Where's that church? Well, if you go out and dally in the world for a while, you might come back appreciating a little more that we're in a process. We have not yet arrived, but it's a whole lot better than the alternative. Who? Anybody here, you've done that? You're like, I'm done. And you walked out and you're like, never mind. We're not perfect, but we're on the path. We're not stopping. Anyway, so she comes back to the land. They go through that horrible journey down by the Dead Sea, and everything dies. Listen, you don't get new life until you die, and you can't die with one eye open. You know what I'm talking about? Just like, are we dead yet? That's not how death works. You don't get to go, does this parachute work? I don't know. Right? You know, you don't get to check your parachute until you jump. Like, you're like, right? Death is a one-way ticket, and you don't get to control the destination. But you do get to choose the conductor. Jesus, where I don't have any other options. I trust you. She says, I don't even know what awaits me in Israel. I'm going back. I have nothing. My husband sold our inheritance. They don't give inheritances back like they're supposed to. It's an unjust system. I'm going back. She goes back, and the first thing that greets her is the Ladies' Aid Society. Oh my, Naomi, the years have not been kind to you, sister. Who here has had to overlook a fence to belly up to the bar? Guess what? That's the only way you belly up to the bar. Masha asked me this question. She said, if we do everything, Jesus said, freely you've received, freely give. Well, if I truly give freely with no expectation of return, not making it transactional at all, then what's the guarantee that my gift will produce anything lasting fruit in you or in us? How do I get people to... So one of the things for us, building a church. How do you build a church without shame, manipulation, and intimidation? How do you get people to volunteer to work with children? Have you seen them? They bite. No, it's not true. I can tell you one right there, Tom. It's because of passion. But passion, I don't get a lot of control with passion. And that's the reality is that without, how do we do this? And Masha said, how do you build something if you can't control? And you know how Jesus was the best ticket in town. Can we agree? Jesus was a pretty amazing ticket. Let's see. He's the Messiah. Just starters. Incredible wisdom and insight. Nice. Short sermons. Very short. Have you seen them? They're like 3 verses long. I was like, I can get behind that. All right. Very short sermons. Did I mention there's a meal plan? You know, free bread, fish. I'm not into the fish, but I'll go for the bread. And then miracles and healthcare program. I mean, it was great. I mean, who wouldn't want Jesus? And then Jesus did what? He used offense to determine who wanted more. Could it be the offense you and I have experienced in relationships, in the body, in our families, was on purpose? No, Scott and I were talking about this, and he said, you know, Peter, I've overcome a lot of offense with you. I'm putting words in his mouth. And he said, and some of it was from God. I'm totally mangling what he said. He said it beautifully and eloquently, but that was the essential part of it. And I said, you're right. You're right. Why? Because here's the deal. We are imperfect people. I'm going to offend you accidentally. But if I'm following God, I'll also offend you on purpose. Because it's offense, overcoming offense that allows you to say, for the joy set before me, it's worth it. Otherwise, it's just transactional. This is my theory anyway. Jesus hasn't asked me what I think on this, but I'll tell anyway. Have you ever noticed a new believer comes to Jesus and they're like, and I just prayed for a car and it appeared in my driveway. Jesus, can I change my plan? I think I'm on the wrong plan. Nobody? Okay, how about this? Who here, you prayed for healing and saw radical healing, and then a little later you're dealing with a cough and a sniffle and you can't get healed? Offensive, anybody? No, offense says I'm not changing the subject. I'm not writing a new story. Who you are, who you've been is who you are, and I'm just going to believe that it hasn't changed, and I'm going to stay with the program. And I love it. It's only the dumb people who stay. Right? You see the disciples that are like, he's like, aren't you guys going to leave too? And they're like, would like to, but where can we go? Because you have the words of life. It offends my mind. It offends my heart. And yet there's something I know that, listen, I know. So watch this. So we remember we got Naomi and Ruth. And Naomi comes into the land of promise, right? She comes back to the land of promise. And what does Naomi do? Nothing. I don't know if she's preparing to die. I don't know what she's doing. She does nothing. Look what happens, though. Naomi doing nothing doesn't take away Ruth's options. So, I'll look at the ceiling on this one. The people you are in yoke with, doing nothing or doing wrong doesn't take away your options. I didn't have a choice. That is bovine kakashka. I'm telling you right here and now, who you are in yoke with does not take away your options to be obedient to Jesus. Ruth says, you know what? I'm going to go try to make something. I don't want to starve. She goes out to a field. She doesn't know this land. She doesn't know the customs. She has no relations here within the system. She is utterly vulnerable. And the evidence is when she goes to a field and she experiences blessing and brings back grain, Naomi goes, keep going to that field because any other field you might get assaulted in. Wait, you knew when I went out that was the option? And you she encouraged her. That's a great idea. I'm sick and tired of doing nothing and getting nothing. I'd like to do nothing and get something. Let's do that. Now, stay with me. It also, Ruth, okay, just because Naomi is doing nothing, just because Naomi is partnering with silliness, but Naomi did get them there. Can we just be real? Her past obedience brought them there. Ruth didn't use Naomi's present disobedience as an excuse to judge her or reject her or to jilt her. Who are my people? Your friends are only as good as the present season. No. And so she goes out and she comes back and she's still honoring to Naomi. What? She's still honoring to her. She doesn't try to make her own way by her own ability. And it says, verse 20, and as a result, Ruth's obedience actually begins to restore the faith of Naomi. Naomi said to Ruth, verse 22 of chapter 2, that her daughter-in-law, it will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, Boaz, because in someone else's field you might be harmed. So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvest was finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Okay, am I the only person who's traded horses in midstream? No? What I mean by that is I start to have something better over here. These people like me. These people see my value. These people. Nobody? Blink twice if you're part of the bad people. You get tired. I get tired of that mess. I'm going over here. Anyway, it's amazing. So the whole thing with barley, the barley and the wheat season is April and May. And so she's out there day after day. If we can pull up those. The first thing is, this is what barley looks in the field. And you have to go down and cut it with a scythe when it reaches a water weight of about 18%. It's dried enough in the field. They cut it. And then the next one, the way they cut it with a scythe, and then the women, see, this is the 1900s. Women were still doing this because you didn't want to leave anything. So they're picking up the extra pieces of hay. They're picking up, see the one person's putting down their fingers like this to pick up grain? She's down on her hands and knees picking up grain out of the dirt. Who here, you have a line you won't cross? We all have those lines in our mind, don't we? I'm too good for this. It's self-respect. She's like, no. And she's not just doing this for her. She's doing it for Naomi, who doesn't seem to appreciate it. Next one. And so they would then the women would gather it in sheaves, and they would put it in the field to dry for about 3 weeks. And then, only then, at the end of 3 weeks, would they they beat it to break the grains free from the straw, and then they would winnow it by throwing it into the air and letting the air carry away the chaff. Remember, Gideon was winnowing wheat down in a hole, right? You need the wind. Anyway, so there's this 3 to 4 weeks of barley and then 3 to 4 weeks of wheat. Now, this is where we pick up the story. One day, and we find out a little later, it's probably close to the end of wheat because it says she was there. So there for 2 months of back-breaking labor. Anybody here had a job as a teenager that was back-breaking? And you got done with one day and you're like, I'm done? Yeah. 12, 18-hour days for week after week after week after week with no hope. What do I mean by hope? Guaranteed outcome. Maybe, and obviously not a lot of appreciation. So Ruth stayed close. And she said, one day, Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, said to her, my daughter, I must find a home for you where you will be well provided. Okay, guys, what do you think? We haven't seen any care from Naomi up till now. What do you think's going on? Just be mean. She wants her to take care of her. Because see, Naomi has no retirement. She has no means of income. She's not willing to go out to the fields with Ruth. She depends on Ruth. So why does she want to get Ruth settled in a family? Win-win. Build that mother-in-law suite. Now Boaz, with whose women you have worked, is a relative of ours. She's not been busy. What has she been busy doing? Genealogy. She's been busy scheming. She was doing something. She was busy. So we got Boaz over here. And we got Naomi over here. She's like, but I got Ruth. Now notice, Naomi coming back has not triggered. Remember how I said they had a law that when somebody was in need, somebody would step in and restore their land to them? Notice nobody's restored the land back for Naomi. Okay. Who here, when you're hurting and you're in need, you revert to scheming to get your needs met? 3 of us. Great. Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. I see that hand. Yes, Lord. Even more, Lord. No, the reality is, let me ask you a question. When I am scheming, who am I dialoguing with? Myself, myself, and I. We're pretty smart. Huh? Fear. Now, is Jesus the author of fear? This isn't a trick question. Right? The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, create fear, right? And so when I'm scheming, I'm working from a place of lack, of not enough, trying to figure out how to self-protect, how to somehow get the ball across the line, right? And so it only takes her 5 or 6 weeks to come up with a plan. How to get Ruth. So she says, Boaz is with whose women you have worked is a relative of ours. Tonight he will be at the winnowing barley on the threshing floor. So the barley has dried. The problem is barley and wheat kind of overlap. So it seems like they've gone ahead. They've broken down the wheat, and now they're finally ready to thresh. The barley and ready to thresh it. And he said, wash, put on perfume, get dressed in your best clothes, then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you're there until he is finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he's lying, and then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Okay. Okay. Anybody see a problem with that? Wiggle a hand if you see a problem with that. I'm not going to uncover it too much, okay? Let's just, can we put it like it is? What kind of a mother does that? A wise one. Oh, she's wise, all right. There was none as crafty as the serpent in the garden. Right? Right? Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Now, okay, so ladies, you're Ruth. What's your knee-jerk reaction? Right? Okay, why is your knee-jerk reaction? Give me a couple reasons.
He's older.
Okay, let's start with the Boaz thing. Older. You don't get to choose my man. What else?
Just plain weird.
Just weird. Weird. What's with the feet? Okay, so yes, you're right. So Naomi knows customs, all right. It's apparently a foot thing. What else? What else would Ruth be thinking about this whole thing? Okay, wait, what? Getting her land back? So I'm just going to, maybe this wasn't what you were going to say, I'll say feeling used. Yeah. What else? I heard something else. Let's just say pimped. It's fewer letters. What else?
Seems like
Manipulation. All right. Now okay. Let's leave Boaz out of it for a moment. As most of us men, it really cracks me up. Like guys will interact with women, the women go back and they're like, you know what he's thinking? No, you don't know what he's thinking. Because he's not thinking. Like that's what always cracks me up. You know, I love that song is like women think more about what men are thinking than men have ever thought. In their entire life. Ever. What you thinking about? Yeah. Huh? I'm sorry, my brain was disengaged. All right, so here's the deal. So we're leaving him out of it. Now let me ask you a question. When you are being manipulated, what are your reactions? Or your neighbors, if you're not willing to say for yourself?
I'm mad.
Mad? Okay. Confused? Tell me why. I like that.
It's an advice, but it's just weird advice.
You don't know which way to go with it, right? Gotcha. That's good. Confused? What else? Shut down. Boop. Shut down. We are done here. What else? Apprehensive. I'll say fearful. Let's go with fearful. It's fewer letters. Distrust. What else? Okay. What I heard? Retreat. Run away. I heard hurt. Violated. Is there another one? Overreact. That's good. Overreact. Revenge. Okay. All right. I've run out of space, but I know we haven't run out of options. Let me ask you this. When I am being manipulated, why am I feeling those things?
Because you feel like you have no choice, and maybe that's what you are worth.
Come on. All right.
Lack of power.
Yeah.
All right.
Overstep boundaries.
Violate boundaries. Come on.
You also don't know your true identity.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let me stop right there because these are all super good. Now remember what we said. The lie is I don't have a choice. But when you try to manipulate me, I feel like I have two choices. Either violate the relationship, say, not happening, or submit and die. True? Okay, stay with that. No worth, because we are designed, God designed us to see, I see myself in the mirror of you. And when you mirror back to me, I'm a thing to be used. Right? Violating boundaries is another piece of that where I just feel unsafe. I feel unprotected. I feel, and the result is it skews with my sense of identity. So, who here, I'll tell you the end of the story, by the way. Ruth says yes. And the result is that King David is her great-grandson. And from David comes Jesus the Messiah. So it ends well for you and me. Now, this is the way it always cracks me up. People read the Bible and they're like, well, it's in the Bible. That means it's a good idea. There's a lot of things in the Bible that are not a good idea. Like don't take this as your plan for living. Ladies with children, with daughters, please don't. Right? No, this is how it works. So, but aren't you glad that Ruth said yes? I'm confused. I'm confused. Are you confused? Please be confused. I just can't handle church people who don't get confused by things that are confusing. Be confused. Because only if you got questions can you get answers. When you're like, well, that's just the way it is. Who here, you ask questions in church and they told you to shut up? Only people with questions get answers. All right. So, what happens? Here's the problem. The enemy, I always say this, you can tell the enemy is speaking when he gives you only two options, die quick or die slow. Kill the relationship or die, right? God is a creative God. He has multiple options. Okay, this whole thing I'm describing right now, who here has been on that hamster wheel in 43 different relationships? Okay, would you like off that hamster wheel? Okay. We're going to talk today how you get off that hamster wheel and you stay showing up vulnerably in relationships rather than like an orphan starting over and over and over. Anybody want that? You want, okay, instead of cycling through. So here's the deal. You are not going to survive this life. I mean, that's obvious on the surface, right? We're all going to die. But stay with me. This life will kill you before you die. You will die. You will die. You will die. Either you will die by trying to protect your life. When I try to protect my life, how do I die? Okay, wait. Self-protect. All right, so self-protect, I die in agony slowly. Okay, why do I die in agony slowly? No hope. No movement. Isolation. Harden my heart. Okay, let's stop there before we all lose all hope. You guys know what this looks like, don't you? So let's swing to the other side. What happens to my heart if I allow myself to be manipulated? Wounded. What else? No trust. Also hardens. Come on. Yeah. Low worth. Yep. What else? Used. It's good. Again, we'll just stop at 5. We could go for weeks, couldn't we? Those are your two options. So which do you choose? Behind door number 1 or behind door number 2? Do either of these seem like good options? Can I ask you a question? Does God give a blessing and add sorrow to it? No. So what's the answer? Both of these is allowing fear to tell me what to do. Both of these are obedience to fear. That's why both of these end up being wrong. But Ruth did something different. See, I believe, and I feel like it's evidenced by her posture, evidenced by the fact that she didn't try to manipulate Boaz. As we get into the story, you'll see she had an opportunity to take it to the next level and didn't. She didn't try to. I'll get to that probably next week if we can, if it's child friendly. But what I want to say is she didn't manipulate. She didn't self-protect. But she did what Naomi wanted her to do. Okay, when you're being manipulated to do something, how do you do it? Huh? Grudgingly.
Standing on the outside, sitting on the inside.
Yeah. Yes. Right? She doesn't do that. She does some things graciously with her open whole heart. How does she do that? Because, see, she doesn't get her marching orders from Naomi. She gets her marching orders from God. She doesn't automatically reject Naomi or automatically submit to Naomi. She listens to God. Anybody here had God tell you to do something that somebody was trying to manipulate you into doing? How's that for death? Doesn't that feel like death? You're like, yeah, but they think I'm being manipulated by them. What if they are? What if they are? In this life, well, if I do this, maybe they'll betray me. They may betray you. Well, if I do this, they might talk bad about me. They might talk bad about you. In fact, Jesus made some promises. You guys remember the good promises, right? You know, I'll never leave you or forsake you. If you follow me, you'll be hated and slandered. There will be trouble in this life. If I will only obey if there's a guaranteed outcome, I will never obey. Or I'll obey one too many times, and it won't turn out the way I want, and then I'm taking my toys and go home. Right? The amazing thing is Ruth finds a path of love and honor towards Naomi that is not according to who Naomi is, but according to who God says she is, and not in some theoretical way, because theory won't last very long. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You can't theoretically honor someone for very long before you're starting to grumble in the inside. And instead, she is able to say, God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? And then when she steps in and she does this, I'll just read it real quick. She says this. She says, I'll do whatever you say, Ruth answered. And so she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits and went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile, where all the workers are out. This is a, man, all these men who've worked a long day are just collapsed, probably half drunk. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking, he was in good spirits. That's code, you know that, right? And over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile, Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man, and he turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He asked. I am your servant, Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of our family. Okay, I'm going to try to say this very subtly. If she had any manipulation, she would have gone the next step and guaranteed that he was going to have to care for her. You tracking with me? She would have gone the next step. She doesn't. She doesn't. And God has prepared Boaz with character as well. Because just like David, Bathsheba's husband, alcohol doesn't take away his honor and his dignity and his ability to be obedient to God. In the middle of the night, he said, since you are my guardian redeemer of our family. The Lord bless you, my daughter, he replied. The kindness, you guys remember what kindness is? That's hesed. That's the divine goodness of God is so shining through her right now. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. She is not grumbling on the inside, or the kindness would not be coming through. What he's saying is, in this situation, you are greater than me. In this situation, you have stooped to show me kindness. The Lord bless you. He said, you have the kindness you've shown me is greater. You have not run after younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you as you ask. All the people of my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Anybody here worried about people talking about you? I can't control what people say about me. I can't control how people respond to me, but I can trust Jesus and be obedient to him. The difficulty is, most of the time, you and I, this is where I'm going to land. Most of the time, you and I, why do we follow and serve God? Not the right answer, by the way. To get something? Like what? Like what would you get by following God? Heaven? Well, what are I hope none of you have signed up to get persecution. But what are the things you signed up to get? Blessing. Heaven. What else? None of you? Peace. What else? Forgiveness, healing. Wow. Yeah, come on. Real networking. Definitely seen that. All right. Networking, forgiveness, networking, peace, healing. Okay. That's a good stop. Let's just put money down there too, just for the fun of it. All right. You know what all of those things have in common? Me. Do you know the number one reason why our lives in Christ tend to be roller coasters? Is because they're narcissistic. Jesus has given you his life, not for you to live for yourself, but to live for others. And nobody is greater than their master. If he is in us, then we look like him. What did he do? He said, no greater love has any man than to do what? Lay down his life. I did not sign up for that. I signed up for people to lay down their life for me. No? Nobody? I would submit this thing. This is such a big deal. Is you and I, we're so fixated on getting our own needs met that we're missing what God is really talking to us about. See, Naomi came back to the land of promise not to be part of God's plan to reach the whole planet. She came back to get hers. You and I have been called to live a life, and it's not for us to meet all of our needs. It says, delight yourself in the Lord, and what? He will give you not delight yourself in the things God will give you, and he'll give you more. You and I have been called. So what is God's heart? God's heart is for my neighbor. God's heart is to reach the lost. God's heart. If I won't give my heart to what's on God's heart, he can't take care of my heart. I thought that was going to be a happier point than that. I really want to, every one of us is in need of conviction in this area. Because not a single one of us at some level has made this Christian faith about ourselves. It's natural. But it is also a black hole that sucks the life out of us. That's why when I don't... Okay. Who here, you were doing good till something bad happened or something you prayed for didn't happen, and then you couldn't go on until that thing got dealt with? No. No, no. I can't afford to be fixated on something God is not pointing me at. I can't afford to have my mind eaten up with my need for this, rather than, God, I trust you with my needs. Now, what's on your heart? That is the way of peace. That's the way of hope. That's the way to step out of the manipulation cycle. Because it's not about submitting to them or protecting myself. It's not about that. It's, God, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? This is repentance. It's turning from my mind to his mind. This is surrender, where I'm not in charge of making all the decisions. I'm not in charge of meeting my needs. And I would submit this is why Ruth broke out of that system and actually joined into, even though it was illegal, joined into the family of God in bringing God's kingdom to the earth. You're as great as whatever it is that you are called to do, there will come a moment, a Gethsemane moment. You guys remember Jesus. Jesus knew what he came to do. You guys remember? The very beginning, he's being tempted. I know why you came. All the kingdoms. You want them? You could have them at no pain. Jesus said, And then you see him 3 years later in the Garden of Gethsemane. He's weeping drops and sweating drops of blood. Why? Because he is tormented by fear. Why? Because he's about to die. Because he was tempted in every way like us. And he says, but Hebrews tells us, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Listen, what was the joy set before Jesus? Us, not himself. The joy set before you cannot be a child, a spouse, a car, a job, some sort of purpose and destiny in life. No. The purpose God has for you, the joy set before you at the end of the day will be other people. Well, maybe they won't see. Maybe they won't recognize me. Maybe they won't see. Do you know Jesus went to the cross for Judas? Judas was the joy set before Jesus. Well, I'll only serve and love if they will. I don't get to control the outcome. Ruth doesn't get to control the outcome when she says, okay, I'll go. I trust. Let me tell you, you and I will not survive this life. We will die. But my question is, will we die being manipulated or die in self-protection, or will we die in surrender before the cross? Jesus, not my will, but yours be done. Because my hope is in you alone. We sang about this. No longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. But Christ doesn't live in me so I can use him like a genie for my own means. Christ lives in me that I might live in him and do what he tells me to do. Live in him and use. I'm money in his pocket to be spent however he wants. Not my will, but yours be done. So this is my challenge right now. If you are hopeless because your hopes have come to nothing, if you are despairing because all of your self-protection has left you alone, if you feel powerless because everybody manipulates you, or you feel abandoned, or you feel just hopeless, would you be willing to bring your rags to the foot of the cross this morning and simply say, not my will, but yours be done. Not my visions of glory, not my visions of grandeur, not my vision of destiny and calling, but Lord, let me, take me, I'm yours. Take me, I'm yours. Not my life, but yours in me. I want to be money in your pocket to be spent how you choose. Because I know in this life I will have trouble, but you have overcome the world. And I will walk with you from glory to glory in obedience to you. If we could have the worship team come up. I'm not going to lie. I know this is a hard message. And I feel like there are many of us who are writhing, trying to find a way out of it, to find it not to be true. But what if it is true? What if the despair is the gateway to the gospel? What if despair is the gateway to hope? Despairing in my own ability to protect myself, promote myself, to get God to do what I want, how I want, but rather it is dying. In dying I live. What if it is? As we go into worship now, I just want to assure you this. You may have to die, but he's worthy, and you can trust him. He's gracious, and he's loving, and he's kind. And that's what we see in the rest of the story of Ruth. Let's stand in worship.
For more information, go to ariselife.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.